Hello and welcome to the TES Secondary Maths Resource of the Week number 48 with me, Craig Barton. Now this week I thought I'd go for a resource that I used last year with my Year 9s and which this year I want to use with my Year 8 class, but I've gone for a little bit of a remix on it and I wanted just to share that with you. So the resource is an absolute classic. It's called Adding Fractions 4 in a Line and it's been kindly uploaded by Cardeem. Again, apologies if I've said that name wrong. And the resource consists of a single page Word document. So let's crack it open and have a look at it. There it is, Fractions 4 in a Line, and it's a two-player game, so get your students into pairs. And player 1 chooses a fraction from the left-hand column and then also a fraction from the right-hand column. He or she adds them together, and if they come up with one of the fractions that are in this grid, then they mark it off with a counter or colour it in or something like that. And then it's player 2's go, choose one fraction from here, one fraction from there, add them together and cover up whatever total they get with a counter and so on, and it is a race to get 4 in a line. Now on the face of it, this resource is very good for consolidating adding fractions, and indeed I used that quite successfully, I reckon, with my kids last year. They got lots of adding fractions practice. It was nice because player 2 had an incentive to check player 1's calculations, so we had a bit of peer discussion going on and all that kind of stuff. But with a little bit of modification, this resource can go a lot deeper than that. Now, obviously, you could use this to practice subtracting fractions, timesing fractions, and dividing fractions, or indeed the whole concept could be used for a different topic, for practicing times tables or adding decimals or something like that. But let's just focus on adding fractions for a minute and see what we can do with this. So I'm a big fan these days, and any of you who've heard me speak over the last year or so will know that I'm a bit obsessed with planning questions ahead of planning resources. My days of kind of designing PowerPoints and worksheets are gone, and I'd much rather take something somebody has already done and just think of rich probing questions to add to it. So that's what I've tried to do with this one. So once kids have played the game for maybe half hour, 20 minutes or something like that, I'd be tempted to bang a few questions on the board. Stuff like, which is the hardest square on here to tick off? Which is the easiest square to tick off? Describe how you went about trying to win the game. What was your strategy for winning the game? But then we can go even deeper than that. Something like, what's the largest fraction you can make with these two things? What's the smallest fraction you can make? Or deeper still, how many of the unit fractions can you make by adding these two things together? Can you make a third? Can you make a quarter? Can you make a fifth? And so on. But then let's go deeper still. I noticed that there's quite a few ones on the board. So what about asking the students how many different ways can they come up with a total of 1? How many different ways can they come up with a total of a half? What total can they come up with in the most different ways? Are there any totals that they can't get? Loads of little questions like that could come into play. Or what about something like, and this, I don't know whether this would work, but I'm just going to chuck it out there because I think there's a bit of potential for this. What about creating a board that's got those fractions down there, but then changing fractions to the fractions in the second column there, and creating a new board that is used by adding every single combination of a fraction in one with a fraction in two. So the first one with the first one with the second one, first one with the third one, and so on. So you get a brand new board, but then presenting the students with the fractions in column 1 and the board, but not the fractions in column 2, and they've got to figure out what those fractions in column 2 were that generated this addition fractions board. I hope that made some kind of sense, because that then gets them practicing subtraction of fractions, but also a bit of logic and possibly even a bit of algebra. So there you go, there's a wonderful resource, and I think just by thinking about it a little bit, you can make it an even better resource. And I find the best way to do that is just to share it with a colleague, just to say to a colleague, here we go, I'm planning on using this resource today. Can you think of any questions I could ask just to extend it a bit further? Or whip it out at a departmental meeting for the last 10 minutes and just say, right, here's a resource, how can we improve this? What questions can we come up with? And before you know it, you've got a whole extra lesson plan that's really going to challenge the students. So there you go, adding fractions 4 in a line. And what I'd like to suggest is, if you ever use a resource on TES, but you actually come up with a question that actually improves the resource or adds a bit more depth to it, on the comments, why not share the question? Why not say, I used this resource, it went down really well, and the question I asked after it was this, and it led to whatever. And that'll then add a lot more value to these resources on TES, these wonderful resources. So there you go. There's adding fractions 4 in a line, and I'll be back with a fresh resource of the week next week. Take care, and bye for now.